me just try and share this. Okay. Okay, should we get started? I think it's probably time. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. With our, I guess, last meeting in September, it's crazy to think about that. There are a couple items on the agenda. Is there anyone before we start that wants to introduce himself or is new to the meeting or anything like that?
Hey, I'm Prem. I'm working for a startup called Lumina Networks, and I've been attending sometime, but this the first meeting with respect to policies and telemetry.
Okay, great. Thanks for attending. Yeah, I've tried to keep some decent notes. There've been some times when my computer just hasn't been working, but all of the meetings are recorded and posted to YouTube. So if you ever just want to go back through, get some context, that should be where.
Sure. Thank you.
Can be found. Anyone else? Okay. Is Jeff? I didn't see if I can't really tell. Jeff, are you or is John on the call?
This is Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I think the first agenda item is yours. So if you want to go ahead and present or talk about it.
Do you want to just click on it?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Just a second.
Yeah, so this is a proposal. We want to, I met with John from Red Hat, so a bunch of Red Hatters. We want to deprecate the existing service graph add-on, which is a written from scratch add-on in the Istio repo to visualize the graph and replace it with Kiali. So the first thing we did is we thought about what being an add-on or a default integration means, kind of looking at Prometheus Grafana. So we included some bullet points on what we think that means, and then a process of how we're going to replace it with Kiali and meet all those requirements. So this proposal, I'm proposing to this group, and then I'd like to discuss more things like, Doug, you mentioned that, how should we get feedback from a wider group before we go ahead and make this change?
Okay. Do you want to walk through any of these?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's here in the doc. Basically, we're going to, in the Kiali's already in Helm available as an option, but we're going to change it so that, like currently in the Istio demo, you get service graph. We'll change it to include Kiali, and then the documentation. We currently have documentation on Istio.io as part of like the walkthrough about telemetry to look at service graph. We'll change that to say, look at Kiali, and then as an addition, we want to go ahead and put a end-to-end test to make sure that the integration doesn't break, that Kiali can be deployed properly.
Yeah, so I think I commented in the doc. I mean, this is something I think I'm 100% in favor of. Kiali offers all the same features that Service Graph did. The only reason Service Graph existed was because nothing at the time existed that could do it. So I don't know of any objections. I don't know if there's anything that anyone else wants to talk about related to this or different ideas.
So I think that the only thing that would mean is that in the past, Kiali has lagged behind the release of Istio, in the sense that we came out with 1.0 and then it took them several weeks to support 1.0. So going forward, if that is the only place to get service graph, then it means that they have to be in sync with Istio release. So I think, well, yeah, we just have to make sure that whatever we release, Kiali works with that, right? Just like we do for everything else, and we have not been. That hasn't been the case so far.
Yeah, that's a great concern. I'll add that to the doc as a concern, and then kind of see what we can say to mitigate that. I think one of the things the end-to-end test should do is kind of see that the telemetry that Istio is putting in Prometheus is what Kiali is expecting, that it's not. There's no mismatch there. So if we have that, then we can see that things break, like that when somebody goes and changes an attribute name, for example, we can see earlier that Kiali needs to be updated as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think, to be fair, service graph could lag to just relied on someone to know to go update it. Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing checking.
That's true. Yes.
Sorry, Scott, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. No. The only thing that I would mention is that this document has no justification. It just says this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Sure. That's a good point. Yeah, and I can add that. And then, of course, the justification would be that service graph is kind of unnecessary to maintain separately if we have something that's already there and has more people working on it and has more feature rich.
So Kiali is specifically only supports Istio as a source of input?
I believe so. I'll let John or somebody else from Red Hat talk about that more.
Yeah, I think John said he's on, but he can't get audio. Is there anyone else?
And I can't get video for some reason. It says it can't find my camera. It's right there.
Yeah, I'm from the Kiali project. I can answer any questions you have here.
Also, so I was asking, is Kiali closely tied to Istio, or does it have other sources of input as well?
Right now, it's tied to Istio only. We get our data from Prometheus, as well as the objects are stored in Kubernetes itself. Okay.
So the reason I ask is Mandar's concerned about kind of being out of phase for a little while. Would it be reasonable for the Kiali repo to move underneath the Istio org and be part of the Istio project if we're going to ship the binaries and they're closely tied?
That could be something we could discuss. I mean, it hasn't been brought up yet. If that's a option or not right now for us, but that could be discussed as something we could look into.
Okay.
So just to add a bit of context to the 1.0 release, there were some really big changes that came in for the configuration, and that's really why Kiali lagged so far behind at that point. It was quite a big task for the Kiali team to update that. Unless there's something major coming down the pipeline, I don't really see Kiali being too far adrift of where Istio is. It was really just the size of that change that exacerbated the problem for 1.0.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Just if it all ends up in the same repo, then we can end up in the same org. Then we can do coordinated releases, basically. So that was the main motivation, right? We can have a full self-contained thing that's tested as a unit, but
so I think that sounds like an interesting thing to talk about in the future. I'm kind of seeing it as an integration like we have with Prometheus and Grafana now, where it's a separate piece, at least just for the initial proposal and the initial change. What do you think would be a good mechanism for us to remember to go back and think about this if we go ahead with a change now and then in the future decide, do we want to do some sort of merge? Or
I think it'll come up if if we have problems.
Okay.
But if everything's working fine, then let's just leave it as is.
So
if we have some synchronization issues,
right, there is another consideration here, and I guess some of the folks are already here but I think this is something that should also go to the TOC, right? Because what we are now saying is that we are making Kiali a kind of part of the main Istio install, and it will be there. And I mean, personally, I'm fine with that. I think it's a great idea, but I think these are the types of things that should just go through the TOC to say that, and then especially further on, it means accepting Kiali project inside the Istio org. So I think at some point in not too distant future, it should come up to the TOC.
yeah. So I'll go add it to the agenda. We can talk about it on Friday.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, we have floated this before,
Yeah.
in different forums. So, but that's part of what I think Jeff started with is we had
Right,
raised the
first step.
concern of getting broader community buy-in. Just so yeah.
Yeah, should we make a post on Istio users and maybe make a poll or something like that?
I think we can send a doc to Istio users. I wouldn't start a poll.
Yeah. No.
Just give people a heads up and invite them maybe to comment or send comments to the TOC or something like that.
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
The doc that's there now is really kind of a work item work tracking thing.
Yeah.
It's probably not appropriate for users. So
Yeah.
I think we just want a note saying, hey, we want to switch from this to this. Here's a pointer to the Kiali UI and website and stuff. And ask negative opinions if somebody doesn't like this.
I think I saw someone from on the phone try and sneak in a word. Is there someone that wanted to say something out on the phone lines?
That was me, Doug. I think you already addressed what I was going to say.
Okay. Great. Is there anything else we should talk about with this, or should we move on to the next item?
The one thing I did want to say is, you notice on the doc we put in when we wanted to do this. We thought the October LTS release coming out, the 1.1 release, would be too early for this. So we're targeting the next LTS release after, which is going to be, I assume, around January, February timeframe. I just want to make sure people were aware of that we're not looking to go in this October, but the following release after that.
So do you think in the October release you can be in, is there anything we should do in alpha form right now?
Well, we could. I wasn't sure how the Istio team does that type of in the Red Hat world, we call things the technical preview. That's kind of like your alpha idea. We could look into that if there is a mechanism or some way that you guys do that.
Yeah, so it's mostly a set of guidelines in terms of if there's an alpha feature in the product, it must be disabled by default. It must not affect the behavior of the rest of the system when it's turned off. You need some basic documentation, basic quality level, and that's it. So if this stuff is done but through different install options that are not selected by default, then I think it'd be easy to put that into the product.
Which is what it already is. Like we already have Kiali there as a Helm option.
So maybe it's just a matter of writing docs for it.
Yeah.
We could add the number 3 here. Instead of replacing the service graph documentation, we could have a Kiali doc added to Istio right away. In addition, and just showing you how to enable the Helm option and then do the things that the current service graph doc
But in fact, I think at that point, in the 1.1 release, we can put docs. We can put a note in the other doc, the service graph doc, saying we're expecting to deprecate this by 1.2.
Okay. Yeah.
And then that'll show up in the release notes, and then people will be aware, and life is good.
That's what we have in 0.4. That's in the doc already.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So sorry, I'm Guilherme. I'm from Kiali as well. Kiali is already part of the Ansible documentation. I mean, probably we should do something on the Helm installer, but Kiali is already part of the Ansible. I mean, just how to install Kiali on Ansible installer.
I was going to suggest the other thing we could do with Service Graph, and it's a pretty simple service, add something to the generated HTML that says deprecated C documentation here for Kiali options or something as well, if we wanted to sort of steer people away from it.
Okay.
That are using it.
Yeah, although it has to say soon deprecated.
Well, I mean, deprecation is said to be started, I suppose, right?
Yeah. You just can't say it's deprecated now and point people to an alpha feature instead.
Right.
I would argue that Service Graph never made it beyond alpha feature status.
Right.
But,
So we're replacing one alpha with another alpha.
but yeah.
Well, that's fine then.
Okay. These are all great ideas.
Cool. All right. Does anyone? Let's see. Lightstep integration PRs incoming.
Yeah, I just sorry, this is Julian. I'm from Lightstep. I checked in a couple of weeks ago saying that we were starting to look at exposing Lightstep as a tracing option in addition to Zipkin. Yeah, just have some PRs coming, waiting for the CLA to be processed. Hopefully that happens soon. Thank you to Jeff, who was a great resource as we reached out and had some questions. And also thank you to the people who had built the Wavefront adapter. Even though these particular PRs are not going the adapter route, they're actually just exposing the Lightstep backend through Envoy directly. We're also hoping to do an adapter as well, and having the Wavefront one there is great because it's a great resource to kind of look at and see how to build these. So thank you to whoever did that and the team behind that.
You said something that worries me. You said you're waiting for the CLA to be approved.
Yeah, so I had, it's possible I did this wrong, but I had submitted a PR yesterday and it's like, oh, you haven't signed CLA. So then I had someone at Lightstep with more authority than me sign it for our organization. And then there was a note that says sometimes that takes a couple of days to go through.
Oh, okay. I thought normally that's instantaneous.
Oh, it's possible that something weird happened. I know that I initially submitted the PR and the commits were from the wrong GitHub email address, and then I changed it over. So it's possible that when I changed it over, it didn't pick up and I need to close it and reopen it. I can try that. But when I click on the CLA link, it still says, oh, we have nothing for you. So I'm not sure exactly how that process works. So I was just assuming that it takes days for the organizational one to be approved and then everything goes through, but maybe not.
Okay, so if there's an issue, send me a note. I'm Geeknoid on GitHub there.
Okay. I will definitely do so. And thank you for that.
All right.
Okay. Awesome. So I added this updates on recent changes just because there was some discussion last week about some of the ongoing things with out-of-process adapters and others. So, and I know there was discussion in TOC about the Istio contrib repo. So I was hoping either Martin or Mandar could sort of just provide a summary of what happened there and how that relates to out-of-process adapters.
Sure. So as of last week, the contrib repo is gone. So it's not there anymore.
Right, so it's not there anymore.
The procedure is basically that we will encourage people to advertise their adapters on Istio.io. So I'm going to work on this over the weekend to put in an even easier process to add yourself to Istio.io. And that's basically it. Everything else, if you're developing adapters, you can put them in your own repo, run your own CI systems for testing and all that kind of stuff, host your own website, et cetera, et cetera. We will provide the discovery, and that's it.
And are we still targeting beta status for 1.1, GA status for 1.1 for the auto process adapter? Or is that sliding back?
Beta status for 1.1, not GA status for 1.1.
So we need the security stuff, right?
Right, and that's actually fairly advanced. So Peter can.
Sure. So yeah, I've seen the doc. I haven't got much feedback from it. I guess it's just should be working for most people. So I guess we can proceed with the config change in API repo and start to coding up.
Yep.
Okay.
So the comments I had on that doc were about supporting more authentication models than we actually need.
Yeah. So basically, we are like there's 3 authentication models that I think initially we want to start to support. First is MTLS for enmeshed adapter, and the other 2 is API token and OAuth for adapters running outside of mesh. So I think, is that a necessary side of authentication mechanism, or Martin, do you think?
I think that's the right set. I was objecting to API keys and basic auth.
Right. Yeah. So we got rid of basic auth, but API token we have still kept, because that is how many people use these kinds of things. And then I think your comment to that was we still shouldn't do it. And now we have solicited feedback from the community and no one has said anything. So
because this is not the protocol between the adapter and the backend. It's between the mixer and the adapter. So nobody's using this. It doesn't exist.
Well, yes, but if someone doesn't want to implement OAuth, right, then API key is the way, is the simplest way of enabling external parties to talk to you. And yes, it's not the best way, but it is a very commonly used way. So even though this is new code, they may not want to immediately support OAuth too. And it's the additional complexity because of that isn't that much.
That's true.
Yeah.
It does add a field to the proto.
Yeah, but it's the code wise is not.
But code wise it's not that much. Yeah, so we already dropped basic auth. So I think that makes sense.
And we can keep having this discussion in that doc too, and PRs to follow, right?
Okay, so we think this is going to be.
Hopefully, we won't have the discussion of removing something
that's already added.
Right, that's already added. So I think we need to kind of draw a line, I would say within a day or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we start implementing, yes, the discussion can be around more specifics.
Okay.
So in terms of delivery, you think you'll have this within a month?
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay, perfect. Is that the only thing preventing us from going to beta?
So I'm doing some perf tests. I don't know whether it's important for beta or not. I mean,
perf test is it.
Or screen
so
test or.
I would say that perf test can block beta. That is correct.
Okay.
If something.
So somewhere.
Correct.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, like do we need to add additional? I worry about things like do we need to add additional buffering and mixer for reports? Do we need to add another check cache and mixer to avoid calling the adapters?
So I think all that will come as So once we do more performance work on this, we will know that.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, right, we went. So this is the trajectory that we followed with all other features. That the feature comes out, it's functional, it kind of meets basic requirements, and then we do the performance work and make it better. So unless the performance is kind of prohibitively bad in an end-to-end test, we should be able to reach beta. If it is bad, then we'll decide whether we reclassify or continue to call it alpha or not.
Yeah. So the key is, what's the definition of prohibitively bad? We'll know it when we see it.
Okay, that's an action item. Okay. Send that to me.
Okay, well, that's good news overall.
Okay.
A quick question: could somebody just drop the link to that security doc in here?
Yes.
Yes, it's if you just go down one page, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's somewhere here,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
it's I think at the
Okay.
top, yeah.
Okay, I'll find it.
Oh. There. Oops. Okay, Vanil, did you want to talk just about the wavefront that was mentioned before?
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention about wavefront adapter. So yeah, I was able to pull it through, and we have the repository published along with the Docker image and all the other configurations. There were a few gotchas because it was out of tree. So I had mentioned earlier that I wanted to create a walkthrough for out of tree adapters. So should I just add a new issue on the Istio repository for that? And like,
Please. Yes. Please,
Okay.
please do.
So I will draft my post there, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so that should be a wiki page, I guess.
Yeah. It should definitely be a wiki page. Not, I mean, I think you can also do additionally a post, but it would be much nicer for it to be a wiki page.
Yeah, I want to create a wiki page, but so for the draft, do I need to create an issue or just work on the wiki page?
So are you a member of the Istio org at this point?
Yes.
Okay, then just start creating a wiki page. Put at the top that something that says preliminary work in progress. And
okay, yeah, that sounds good. All right, thanks.
Okay. The other thing in there is something I put on the agenda. We had sent docs out, I think 2.5 weeks ago, and talked about it at the last policy and working group meeting. But the Envoy stats collection was fairly expensive. I think it was like a 10% overhead. And plus you had to run this Statsseed Prometheus collector. So there have been PRs that have gone into the mainline branch and then I think are now being cherry picked over to the release 1.0 branch that completely eliminate the Statsseed Prometheus process. And they work now by exposing a port on Envoy that already points at the existing Prometheus endpoint on each of the envoys and some config in the Prometheus add-on that knows how to scrape that directly. So we don't use annotations, so the annotations can be saved for application purposes for scraping. And that should be a big win. A lot of what we do is we drop a ton of the metrics coming out of each proxy that aren't needed or conflicting and focus just on things that allow us to do targeted queries about the versions of config generated by pilot that the envoys have so that we can track config rollout across proxies, et cetera. So that's sort of our approach going forward. And I think it has been paying off fairly well. And I think that's what the next bullet is somewhat related to.
Yeah, and then regarding not using annotations, there is also another PR that went in behind it, which enables scraping when MTLS is enabled. So it enables application metric scraping from Prometheus when MTLS is enabled, and that was also an ask by several users.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So StatsD Prometheus actually saved like almost 15% CPU. The next bullet is actually there was another optimization that just went into Mixer, which saved about 12% CPU kind of across the fleet. And there is another one on Mixer client which essentially disables delta compression in batch, and that is also saving about between 10 to 12%.
Have you looked at what it does to Mixer?
Or CPU. It increases it a little bit, but those second tests are still ongoing. But it increases the Mixer CPU by just a little bit. But combining those two actually drops the whole thing down quite a bit.
Yes, I wonder if have you looked at the implementation of the delta compression? Because compression is a kind of a fancy name here. It's not really compression. It should be a trivial amount of work. I'm surprised it's consuming that much CPU time, unless there's a bug.
Oh, in terms of actually time on the flame graph, it was consuming like 30% of the time, I believe. But
wow.
But yeah, it actually affects the total CPU in a non-linear way. And that's been my observation so far. But some of those measurements are still coming in for the second part. The first part is all measured, and that's we know that saves CPU.
Okay, I guess I would put this in the category of a bug. The algorithmic complexity of what it's trying to do is very low. This should not have such an impact.
It has to iterate through each of the things that it collects, though, right? Each time.
Right. It has to keep track of what I've seen so far. So not having to keep track of things is.
But look, you're going from having 100 attributes on the wire to having 3 or 4. So the upfront cost of doing this deduping or whatever, this delta encoding, should be offset by the cost of transmitting this over TCP and doing all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I still think there's a bug there. If you fix the bug, you might end up being able to save more CPU time total.
Okay, I can point you to the code, and maybe there is something there. But after we did the tests, I believe Wayne has a PR where he just completely removed it from the code base. I mean, we can always add it back. It's just to revert. But yeah, so I'll follow up with you on that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
And this is just a very kind of here and now thing. There is a blocking issue with Mixer, where Mixer starts up with some or all or most configuration missing. And several people, including Scott and several others, have reported it. And we have a good theory, and Peter was able to reproduce that work. So we have a way forward. It's a P0 for.
I already sent out a PR to fix it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Doug, earlier this week you sent an email about some corruption.
Yeah, and we still don't know, at least as far as I know, what's actually causing it. There was one report on the mailing list and a separate, distinct report in the GitHub repo of people that were running. And after a little while of running, they would all of a sudden see instances with duplicated dimensions, which then would get sort of manifest as Prometheus failing to add new metric data, because all of a sudden the dimensions don't line up and they didn't match the previous reported instances for the same metric name.
That's really baffling, because all this stuff is in mutable state.
Yeah, it's it's really hard to figure out how it could be happening.
Can you explain the duplicate dimensions? I didn't quite follow that particular part. What does that really mean?
So let's say I have a metric that has 3 labels on it, 3 dimensions, and
Okay.
it's like A, B, and C.
Mhm.
So you're getting those in for a while. Then all of a sudden you get a metric in that has A, C, or A. So it has the same number of labels, but it's a repeat of the dimension field with the same values.
Okay.
And so I don't know what could explain that fully when I look at the code.
Oh.
And once it gets in that mode, is it stuck there, or is it just random?
Yeah, at that point, it seems like the report is. It seems like when you get in that position, all of a sudden now you can no longer do anything. And so the only solution is restart the pod, and all of a sudden everything starts working again for a little while. So I have not been able to reproduce this in any way. I've got clusters that I've had up for months that I'm running data through. I haven't seen it. I look at the code, and it's kind of hard to follow all of the ways that everything gets created. And there's a lot of pointers being passed around.
The generated code is
Right.
the main, I guess, part here.
Yeah, and it goes to generated code, which is always nice to read through. But I can't duplicate it.
The data for this kind of stuff. Oh well, wait a minute. Okay, so you're saying the metric that is arriving has a dimension that's replicated. Okay.
Yes. And because of that, it doesn't. And then this manifests as Prometheus saying you don't match the schema because previously you used labels A, B, and C, and now you don't have label B or something. It's not always the same in the reports. So it's not like the same label is getting inserted twice. It just seems to be a sort of random selection. Anyways, if anyone has any insight or has seen this, I think we need more data.
So one more thing that caught my eye, I think I mentioned it to Doug, is that someone also reported that the Prometheus endpoint also gets into a bad state, right? The scraper itself errors out.
Prometheus itself,
the scrape endpoint, right? Like, so our 42422 endpoint, if you do an HTTP get to it, like that also errors out saying, I don't know what to do. I got weird metrics. So it seems that there is rejection of incoming things sometimes to the adapter. But if the rejection actually takes place, then it should not corrupt the in-memory state of the what is called Prometheus registry inside the adapter. But it seems that also is happening. So Prometheus cannot scrape anything now because things are erroring out.
But after, so that's also a transition. It works and then it stops working.
Right.
Yes, correct. And then a restart fixes it. So yeah, I mean it's some shared pointer, shared state somewhere.
Yes, something is causing corruption, but it's not clear where. And the reports from Istio 07, Istio 10, and I think even with Istio 11 now, or 101. So this crosses a lot of time, but it's happened on clusters where there's been upgrades starting with Istio 05 all the way up. And so maybe there's ghost config somehow sticking around. Like there's lots of ways that we could theorize, but I have yet to be able to reproduce it. And I'm hoping someone has some insight into how this could be happening. There might be something I'm just completely missing when I read through the code.
Because in theory, this should be immutable data. The only thing that comes to mind is there's a bug in the Go runtime and something's poking something that's not supposed to. I don't see how we could be doing this.
It gets delivered. Does it get delivered as a map or an array?
It's an array of pointers to instances.
Yeah, I mean, so reusing things, reusing arrays. That's what that looks like.
Yeah, and like any buffer pool or something like that. Like who knows, right? But it doesn't seem problematic.
I wonder. So what if I was going to say, what if in particular cases one of the fields is not available, and we just end up passing whatever junk was in that same data structure to the adapter again. But that would be a once in a while, not a always kind of situation.
Right. And you would think that would be, that would manifest as an, I mean, obviously there's a bug somewhere, but you would think this would manifest as like an error if the field wasn't available. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, if you have any ideas or want to spend a few hours going crazy looking at it, we definitely welcome that. I'll find the bug and link it here, so you can see some of that discussion.
I wonder if our other adapters might not be as strict and wouldn't complain if this happens to them.
Right. So I've asked for logs from like the standard IO adapter just to see like if the corruption is just happening per adapter or if it's happening across. But I don't know that we got that information. I haven't looked today at the bug.
Okay, I'll spend a little while looking at the code, see if anything pops out where this kind of stuff could happen.
Okay. Is there anything else we should talk about this week? Anything anyone on the phone wants to bring up?
Kind of quaint that you call it the phone.
Well, there are people actually using phones to dial in, so I feel okay.
Yeah, we're using phones. We're using phones.
Yes. Okay, well then, if not, I think maybe we can just adjourn and go get lunch or a late afternoon snack, depending on where you are.
Right.
Maybe a morning snack.
Alrighty.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.